2021 is a go, go, go! Cue the intro! We officially have the 2021 F1 racing schedule on track. So we just had the Bahrain Grand Prix today and right off the bat, water race. Just amazing. It was so much fun. And before we get to the race, let's start out with the race weekend, and we have a few changes in the race weekend. So the first change was the free practice sessions went from 90 minutes to 60 minutes. So all three sessions had a half an hour reduction, which actually meant more on track work and not a lot of dull moments in the middle or teams waiting for the optimal time of the day and track temperatures to go out to get relevant data. It was always on, everybody going out. And right off the bat, we saw some amazing colors on the cars, with the Aston Martin and the Alpine looking really great in race conditions, and the color was just awesome in the liveries. I did talk about this in the testing sessions as well, but on the race weekend it hits a bit differently. So it was always fun to see cars out on the track and the beautiful sounds of the V6 turbo hybrid era engines. Just amazing to see them going flat out in the third practice session, doing their qualifying runs and all of the tire testing and everything, and it was so much hectic fun. And in Q1 we already saw some of the fun being spoiled by Nikita Mazepin spinning at turn 1. Yeah, it's gonna be a downhill event for him throughout this weekend, and I'll get to that as and when it happens. But yeah, it doesn't look good for Mazepin. The next important point here was Yuki Tsunoda's first Grand Prix at the age of 20, which is actually the year gap between Yuki Tsunoda and Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen being in the sport for 20 years now. So Yuki Tsunoda, 20 years. Alonso and Raikkonen, 20 years of experience. How do they equate in the race? Pretty fun actually. I'll get to that. So Q1 it was pretty normal. Mazepin was out, but not a lot of people were out at the beginning of Q1. So at the 10-minute mark was the first round of laps, which is pretty weird because the first 5 minutes was completely empty track with only Mick Schumacher on track. Again, Mick Schumacher, another win. Hopefully we see him have some fun races with whatever has to provide. It's probably last. It will be last. It was last. So at the end of Q1 we lost Ocon, we lost Vettel, Mazepin, Latifi, and Ocon and Vettel had a tough time because of the Mazepin spin at turn 1, which pulled out the yellow flags, and also Carlos Sainz engine cutting out in the middle of sector 2, which also caused the yellow flag, which caused both of them to drop their lap and not improve. So they went down the order and they went away. So now coming on to Q2, it was again nearly everybody were on the mediums, and it was a normal type of race, but we have a few outliers here where Perez was near the bottom, where because his first lap attempt was removed because of the turn 4 out of bounds track cutting, which is monitored for this weekend, which is really crucial and decides the end of the race. Spoiler alert, but you have already seen the race, so what am I talking about? So at the end of Q2 we lose Perez, who did a second attempt with another set of mediums, but it was good enough to stay in the top 10. Antonio Giovinazzi, Kimi Raikkonen, Yuki Tsunoda and George Russell were out in Q2, which was expected, and the Q3 shootout was again between the top 3, Hamilton, Verstappen and Bottas. Again, the podium places getting pretty old, but yeah, it was always going to be the 3 of them. Perez was out of Q2, so it wasn't a question of him being a thorn in Mercedes' way. So all of them did have some good runs, and at the end we got Max Verstappen P1 with Lewis P2 and Bottas P3 with a gap of 300ths of a second and 500ths of a second. Charles Leclerc P4 was a good strong showing for Ferrari for qualifying. Pierre Gasly for AlphaTauri P5 was also a great showing. Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris P6 and P7, just expected of them to be in their top 10 easily and the third best team right now. Carlos Sainz also did a good showing in his first Ferrari outing at P8. We have Alonso at P9 and Lance Stroll at P10. So now let's come on to the race, which was another crucial bit of fun because so much happened even before the race began. So while on the formation lap, Sergio Perez's car cut out and the steering just went black and he stopped in the middle of the track. So even though the rest of the grid had already come to and stopped in their starting point and waiting for the off, the yellow lights came on again and they had to do another formation lap, and somehow Perez did some sort of software reset and got his car running on its own power and had to go through the pit lane and do a pit lane start for the start of the race. And start of the race was pretty normal. All of the leaders went out, nobody made contact in turn 1, everything was going normally, and turn 3 another Haas goes into the wall, and this was just so much bad luck because we came out of the Haas going into the wall with Romain Grosjean last year, just a couple of months ago, which is really heartbreaking, and to see another Haas go into the wall without any serious injuries this time, but still with the Haas having limited funding this year and they had to survive somehow, and yeah, losing a car in the first sector of the race was pretty sad. And this brought out the safety car, and I had made a few predictions with one of my friends when I was talking about this, and I did say that Nikita Mazepin will be a cause of some sort of virtual safety car, yellow flag, or a full safety car, and I was proven true in lap 1. That was a bittersweet moment, but yeah, it's racing and it happened. So we continue on. At the beginning of lap 3, we have the end of the safety car, and again the leaders go away flawlessly, nobody touches anybody, no overtaking are done in the top 4, and then Pierre Gasly loses his front wing from contact and we get a virtual safety car. You heard me right. So another additional formation lap which reduced the lap count from 57 to 56 total. 3 laps of full safety car, lap 4 virtual safety car. So we haven't had any racing happen at all for a full complete lap. And also we get to see Mick Schumacher having a spin at turn 1, but no damage to anybody, it was just a spin. He recovered quickly and came up to the end of the pack, and we had Gasly pitting for a new front wing and coming out in last place. And also because Perez did a pit lane start, he came through during the safety car and pitted again for a new set of tires, which was probably better for him in terms of strategy, but this was again something he had already done in the previous races, that was come from the back of the pack to the top and win the race last year. But let's see how it goes here. So there were so many fights going on throughout the race, and from where I stopped off, we can start out with the normal fight we had between Bottas and Leclerc, and I'll just talk you through the overtakes that are happening. So Yuki Tsunoda takes George Russell for P15 on lap 10. Sainz and Stroll have contact but no damage to anybody. Perez takes Vettel for P13 on lap 8, so you have to know that Perez came from last from lap 1. Then Norris takes Leclerc for P4, Leclerc takes Ricciardo for P5, Yuki Tsunoda takes Vettel for P14, Perez takes Ocon for P12 on the next lap, and then on lap 12 we start getting the first round of pit stops for a strategic 3-stop or 2-stop pit stop race. So this race was never going to be a 1-stop that anybody thought it would, because the track was really abrasive and it ate up the tires like it was junk food. Really hard on the tires to survive in this race, and it showed because a lot of the drivers had to do some lifting and coasting or managing their times and making the tires last as long as possible. And Lewis Hamilton pits on lap 14 and Max pits on lap 18. So Lewis went for the hards and Max continued on with another set of mediums. So another fight that we got was with Sainz in P8, Vettel in P9, Alonso in P10. They went from turn 1 to turn 4 completely trading places left and right. So it was Sainz ahead, then Alonso got ahead of both of them when Vettel tried to take some space in the middle, but Vettel went front. Then again Sainz got front, and it was really hectic and really fun to watch that close of a battle between these top drivers. Another thing of beauty that I got to see, and the race directors did show this in a few of the shots, was the front brakes glowing red hot and just looking amazing amazing at the end of turn 1, which is the biggest braking zone for all of the vehicles, and the front discs are glowing and just magnificent things that I would really download as a picture if anybody has taken it and keep it as my wallpaper, because that was just And out of all of this, the youngster really did shine, which was Yuki Tsunoda, who was going against Alonso like they were old competitors, going side by side 2 turns and overtaking. Tsunoda took Alonso for P12 on lap 26 on turn 1 on the inside with the late braking, and it was just great to watch him and his talent show in the AlphaTauri. And then the second round of pits started on lap 29, where Lewis pit for the hards again, and Bottas pits a lap later, and Max stays out for a few more laps to pit on lap 40 and comes out 8.2 seconds behind Lewis, and this is where the critical chase began. So 16 laps left, 8.5 seconds to make up for the lead of the race. And you should know that Red Bull was in control of this race from the onset. He led from the start, only lost it because Lewis undercut him for the first pit stop, and while Lewis was maintaining the lead for a few laps here, on lap 43 Lewis broke the all-time lap record for leading most laps in F1 with 5,112, which breaks the previous record of Michael Schumacher, which was 5,111, and by the end of the race it was 5,126 laps led. So a record-breaking evening for Sir Lewis Hamilton, the recently knighted racing driver from the Queen of England. Here is where the fun part began, where Max Verstappen was really chasing down Lewis at 1 second a lap in the beginning part, where his tires were fresh, and he was still pushing and getting at least half a second each lap in the second sector. So it was really coming closer and closer and closer, and by lap 50 he had a gap of 2 seconds between him and Lewis Hamilton, and this is where everything happened. And it was so much fun because he kept pushing and pushing and pushing until he got himself into DRS range, and on lap 53 he did his overtake on turn 4, but he went really out of bounds in turn 4, and he was told by the race control to give back that position to Lewis, which he did in the next corner at T7. But a point to note here was Lewis and Valtteri were going a bit wide in that sector during the beginning stage of the race, and they weren't really gaining a position, but they were just going wide. And when Mercedes got the directive from race director to not do that anymore and to keep them in check, they did keep themselves in check and they didn't go out of bounds. But an overtake using the out of bounds is the definition of gaining an advantage, so Max had to give back the position. He could have stayed in front and taken a penalty, but the team did not get the option from race control, and they got the race control directive to give back the position, and they did so, which didn't really make Max happy, but he had to oblige and he gave back the position, but he had to go on the dirty side of the road to give Lewis the way out. And this is where it started to turn a bit downhill for Red Bull, because after that Max had to struggle for a few corners, and he did try to do an overtake on the next lap, that is lap 54, but he just couldn't do it. And on lap 55 he just fell away to around 1 second, where he was literally around 4 tenths of 5 tenths behind Lewis for all the previous laps. He fell all the way back to 1 second, and this was probably because of the dirty air that Lewis's car was throwing up, and also the hot air, which also affects your cooling when you're following another race car that close by. So Max lost a lot of ground, and he did try to make it up, but Lewis did his energy deployment in the right places at the right times just to keep Max bay. And this was so reminiscent of Max and Lewis again in Monaco a couple of years ago, where Lewis was actually down on power and he could and did defend his way through in Monaco and won that race. And yeah, it was still a defense from the defending champion, and he won the race. And Valtteri, who had a huge gap to P4, did pit for another set of mediums to go for the fastest lap, and he got the fastest lap on the last lap. So that was just complete chaos at the start of the race and the end of the race, and in the middle of the race it was a lot of the midfield drivers overtaking each other and going through their pit strategies and always constant overtaking, because the DRS was really powerful here in Bahrain, and it was just overtake after overtake on each lap on the main straight or on the second straight before turn 4. And even Tsunoda versus Kimi Raikkonen, the youngest versus oldest, were going elbow to elbow and fighting it out for position. Beautiful to see the start of 2021 be in this spectacular fashion, and I hope all of the races are this close and this entertaining, and the pack has considerably gotten closer to each other compared to the previous year, because when you look at the lapped option here, the leader did lap all the way up till P12, which was Antonio Giovinazzi, and in the previous year it was already up to P10 or even P8 in a few of the races. So you can see that the pack has, instead of going longer, they have come a bit shorter and brought the competition right into the mix, and it was just so much fun to watch. So we have the final standing of Lewis Hamilton first, Max Verstappen second, and Valtteri Bottas third, and this trio have broken another record of the most common trio to stand on an F1 podium for 14 times, and this was held last time by again Lewis, Vettel and Nico Rosberg in their Ferrari and Mercedes heyday in the 2014-2015 years, which was also 14 times. So they have broken another record here as well. So last year wasn't good enough for Lewis to break records. He started breaking records again this year as well. So P4 was Lando Norris, a great showing for McLaren. Sergio Perez P5 was a great recovery drive after starting P20 from the pit lane. Charles Leclerc P6, Daniel Ricciardo P7, Carlos Sainz P8. So we have Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren and Ferrari in the top 8. It's really good to see competition going in the midfield, and Yuki Tsunoda P9, Lance Stroll P10 picking up the final points for Aston Martin. And then we have Kimi Raikkonen P11, Antonio Giovinazzi P12, a great showing for Alfa Romeo, showing that they have the power to be in the midfield. Esteban Ocon P13, George Russell P14, which was a good result. Sebastian Vettel, it didn't work for him somehow. He had mistakes, he had unfortunate events happening around him. Mick Schumacher P16, Pierre Gasly, it does show as qualified P17, but he did retire his car. And Nicholas Latifi P18, when Fernando Alonso also did retire his car due to brake issues, and Nikita Mazepin was the first collateral of the collision into turn 1. So at the end of the day, it was an amazing race weekend with a lot of ups and downs, with the hecticness of everything that happened, and the toe-tapping tension of the last few laps was just exhilarating, and I would like to see more of this in the upcoming races as well. So I guess that's it for this race weekend recap, and hopefully we see more of this in the future. So if you like this video, give this video a like, get subscribed to my channel, comment down below if I missed anything in this race, and stay home, stay safe. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace.